Hi, this is an email going out to the folks that are registered and planning to attend the upcoming September 1920 SISE Data-Driven Decision Making, or 3DM workshop with the All Hazards Consortium in conjunction with Edison Electric Institute. So first, let me welcome you if you're new to this organization. You know, this is hard to get your head around. What is the SISE? It looks like things you're familiar with, but in my 15 years, I've really never seen an effort like this. I've never seen an effort that brings multiple states, multiple companies, and multiple federal agencies together to focus on a single problem at a time. It's amazing. Now, the downside of that is this takes time. This takes planning. So this workshop is certainly a workshop, but it's also a planning session. So I get asked all the time, you know, what is the SISE? It is more than data. It is more than a dashboard and tools. It is more than a person or a group. It's a framework. It's a legal framework that was started really back in 2013 by John Shaner and Aaron Strickland and many of the folks that were around in the very beginning, Chris Eisenbray, that started working with states in the Mid-Atlantic region to work on custom problems to build custom solutions. So these are not solutions you're going to find anywhere else, but these solutions only come out, they are only developed with sustained integrated planning. So the way the SISE works, it provides a legal framework where all the identities of people are vetted, and they come and start working on problems. So the problems are what the SISE is trying to solve. But the SISE has to provide a legal framework for private, direct conversations, without media, without regulators, any of that stuff. And this happens all on the phone, for the most part. They come out of the woodwork 4 times a year at these workshops, but a lot of it is done every Friday morning at 9 o'clock, every Wednesday at 9 o'clock. We have these ongoing calls, and those calls focus on a specific problem or a set of problems they're building custom solutions at. So in the very beginning, I'll give you a great example. We needed a way to get through toll stations faster. This was John Shaner's use case. So the short-term fix, after working with Jersey, Pennsylvania, Maryland, and DC, Chris Geldart was the director of emergency management in the District of Columbia. Through 3 phone calls, what they came up with was a process. So every solution we look at, what's the short-term win, what's the midterm, what's the long-term? And that's courtesy of John Shaner and his strategy for that. He hates it when I call out his name, but the fact is he knows what he's talking about. And so he worked with the consortium and Joe Picciano and Sherry Black and Steve Gutkin in New Jersey at the time, and they came up with a process that was a workaround during Sandy. And that process was, hey, use the right lane where there's a person, give them a business card, count the trucks, and move on. And that got them through the Sandy mess. Well, afterwards, they needed a midterm solution. So number of meetings later, we found Vic Bueno in Delaware. And Vic had a commercial process. They don't advertise a lot, but it basically allowed people to upload in a Delaware account, upload your trucks into that database, and now all your trucks or anybody in that online database could use EasyPass anywhere in the EasyPass region without having a tag on their car, without having a transponder. And now and that worked fairly well. A lot of companies, a lot of utilities have signed up for that. I forgot the number, but it's been a growing number every year. But the idea now is we're working with the state of Pennsylvania, and a third process. We've had 3 calls on this already, as that will be a tagless system, meaning no transponder, and it'll work across the Canadian border. It'll work with any toll system in the United States. Okay, it's done through a third-party provider now that is working now and getting basically setting up partnership with states. But this will be another solution. So the point is, we house all these solutions and operational guides and processes. We needed a place to house them that wasn't a public website, and that would be easy to access, and that all the information in there was vetted. It wasn't just crap thrown on a portal, right? It was all tied to a use case. So most of our use cases we're discussing today are Black Sky Day or basically disaster response mode use cases. So we've developed solutions for better regional situation awareness. We've developed solutions for faster emailing. When you see the email fleetmove@fleetresponse.org, That was a use case where we needed to get multiple states to send their documents faster instead of sending them to me or to John or whatever. So we set up this email, and when an email comes into that email address, it automatically forwards out to the private sector 24/7. So that was a way of expediting declarations and waivers. So that use case produced that product. And so anyway, we've got about 14, my guess is maybe about 18 products the Fleet Working Group has produced, and then there are products that are produced outside by third-party organizations, NASA, NOAA, FEMA, DHS, DOE, a number of vendors that provide products. I think one of the most innovative solutions that is kind of an ongoing one is during one of the storms, I forget, we were working with Mike Ambrosio from Wakefern Foods, and Mike said, you know, Tom, when Sandy hit, you couldn't rent or find a generator anywhere in the region. They were all gone. He said, we took them, you know, for our stores. We were out in front of that by 2 weeks. He said, so we ended up supplying the state with some generators for hospitals because we couldn't let our stores go out of business. So the problem was, all right, when you can't find generators within 100 miles, where do you go to find a listing of these people? So very quickly, we worked with some research partners, and we put together a emergency resource library website that started by mapping every generator provider, either a rental or a sale, in the United States, and by region. And they had to be approved. So they had to be able to prove that they were working with the utility, because you can't just slap generators in there, as Carlos Torres told me one time. You got to make sure those generators are the people putting them in are in working conjunction with the local utility. So we did that. Well, that one little effort now led to mapping of emergency resources across hundreds of issues and thousands, if not tens of thousands, of data points. Dry ice, porta potties, generators, commercial cleanup. The list is crazy, right? It's not all that database is not in the SISE yet, but we've mapped them. So my point is, for those of you that are new to the SISE, what the SISE is a framework that allows public and private to come together and focus on problems that are not easily solved, and then produce those solutions, sometimes involving sensitive information, and we house them in the SISE App Store. Okay, they are not for general consumption. So this is not like a Google or a WebEOC or eTeams or Purveya or some of these other systems that are out there that use a combination of open source data. Those are all good, and they do a great job, much better than we do. It's not we, the SISE, at sharing some types of information. But the products that are in the SISE, the data in the SISE, is a combination of open source and private data you're not going to get anywhere because it's sensitive, competitively, regulatory, legal, what have you. So as you come to this workshop, we're going to have a series of discussions and briefings, but every one of those sessions will have decisions made based on the next step for that. So, for example, we're going to have a session on the operational readiness level standard. This is a product developed out of the SISE work group in conjunction with NASA and the private sector and the ESIP Federation, which is the Earth Science Information Partner Federation. It's a group of about 110 universities funded by NASA, NOAA, and federal agencies working on Earth science data. They produce the data and the standards that they hope get consumed someday by the federal agencies and eventually private sector. Well, our problem was, how do you know during a storm, you get all this data, you don't know if it's reliable or not. You don't know what source it's at. You don't know the data. There's no standard for data consumption. So working with Carrie Hicks at Duke Energy and Karen Moe at NASA, the Fleet Working Group, along John Shaner and Jim Nowak and Mike Zappone, Kent Kildall from Verizon, we had other carriers involved. They worked together and created a standard to say, hey, this data is ready for operational use and that data is not. And there's 4 levels, level 1, 2, 3, 4. 1 is ready to go and it meets the following 19 standards, whatever they were. ORL rating of 2, operational readiness label of 2 is good to go, but it might not be fully, it doesn't meet all 19, it meets 14 of the standards, right? And then all the way down to 4, which could be crowdsourced. You can still use the data, but you got to proceed at your own risk, right? And the idea is not to rank data, the idea is to improve all data to be a level 1. Okay, so that takes time. But the idea was we needed a standard we could assign to all of the products and all the data that's in the site. So when you're using a product, you know if it's ranked, and if it is it a 1, 2, 3, or 4. So that standard was the result of public-private planning to produce the ORL ranking. You with me? And so Carrie Hicks has developed a prototype that will automatically rank data. You answer questions, it goes through the ORL standard, and boom, spits out a 1, 2, 3, or 4. Okay, fantastic product. But you'll get a brief on that, and we're going to talk about how we can use now and get your GIS people involved so we can test it within your organizations with regards to operational use, like Duke is doing. You'll hear a presentation from Greg McShane at DHS, the National Infrastructure Coordination Center, the NIC. They're sharing data now with the consortium through the SISE, and we're going to be sharing data with them. But better, they have more data and resources than anyone will ever have. Greg is working with Matt Wambacher, who runs that group, and they're creating specific dashboards that we'll get access to that are event-driven: hurricane, earthquake, wildfire, flooding. It's fantastic. So we're helping, we're giving Greg input into that through the SISE working group, and they want to capture our ORL ranking standard and help integrate it into their environment within DHS, because they have executives that want to know the reliability of data. And our point is, hey, we shouldn't have two standards. Let's have one standard we all agree to, and they've agreed. So you'll hear from Greg McShane, and then the decision we're going to make is how do we now integrate these dashboards and give SISE users access to that and give them access to some of the data sets we have as appropriate. So third, we're going to talk about data sharing, and I just want to calm some people. We're not looking for data from you guys. In the beginning, most of the folks in the private sector are going to be consumers of data that's already here, right? So we call it the sensitive information sharing environment, but that is not an assumption you're ready to share data. This takes time. Building trust is what this is about. This takes time to do, and that goes for states and companies. So it takes a while for people to understand what the SISE is, and I've had numbers of conversation with private sector folks that are come into the SISE framework and are really nervous and skeptical. But after they see it work and they see how the framework is set up and they meet some of the government folks involved that are operations people just like you, the skepticism goes down, the trust starts working, and now they're moving into more productive dialogue that they can actually get things done. But the whole point of this workshop is we're going to focus on, I think, 6 or 8 areas. Long-term sustainment of the SISE, there'll be a discussion about that, how we market and educate people to the SISE framework. We'll have a discussion around the dashboard we use, developed by NASA, and how we use that with a daily disaster dashboard. Anyway, you'll get the agenda. But over the course of 2 days, every session is either going to brief for the sole purpose of providing a decision and next steps, number one. So you'll have a seat at the table on that. And number two, if it's a brief on what's been done or what we're going to do, but at every session will have the decisions listed there. Here's what we're about doing that. And I think in the future, we want to have a new design to our workshops where our workshops are totally operational focused. They are focused on use cases. So we bring public and private together in workshop 1, let's say in the spring, and we're going to focus on sharing drone information, or we're going to on propagating the ORL into pieces. We've got several proposals of use cases. We want to decide which ones get worked on, kind of a regional national staging area with private sector working with each other, like Walmart, Costco, big parking lot location store owners can work with utilities to create a pre-staged network all over the country to help inbound fleets, mutual assistance fleets, fuel, so forth, trucks and so forth, where this can all be done ahead of time. This is already being done in North Carolina. We want to talk about, is that a use case the group wants to take on? We've got several initiatives going on in the drone space, sharing information, creating a kind of a network by county to have people fly those. We want to find a way to better use that. So there's a series of initiatives underway. They're not full-blown use cases yet, but at the end of the day, this is what the purpose of this workshop is. So we hope it's a productive one for you. If you're new, we want you to get a chance to meet the people. that are part of the SISE working group, public and private. We want you to get a feel for the culture of what this is about. We're very, very thankful and appreciative Edison Electric Institute has graciously hosted it again. Beautiful space. It's central to everybody, and we'll provide you some updates on some new legal frameworks that are being developed at the state level, which are very exciting, which will allow the private sector even closer ties to their state through private sector operated work groups working with the state EOCs. So we've got a full agenda, but I wanted to send this video out if you've registered so you know what you're coming to. And if you have an issue, if you have a problem that you've been wrestling with, I don't care what it is, in disaster management, cybersecurity, doesn't really matter. This is where we want you to send me an email and let me know. We're building a use case library and a parking lot of potential use cases. And they cross the whole gamut: cybersecurity, disaster management, active shooter. They cross everything. So what our hope is this year is to start moving into blue sky day use cases, meaning working closer with the fusion centers, working on use cases that will allow us to expedite information sharing across a number of issues, whether it's cybersecurity or regular security or what have you. That's the idea behind these workshops. I think this is our 6th. Kent Kildow from Verizon is the current chair, along with Alexander Woodruff from FEMA Logistics. At the end of the day, we hope this to be a very productive workshop. And we've got somewhere around, I think, 12 to 16 decisions we're going to make at this meeting that'll keep these projects moving forward. So we're very excited to have you coming. We'll look forward to seeing you on the 19th. Okay? I hope this update was helpful. I'm in the rain and I'm out of gas. So I'm heading over to my mother's. She's 95. So I try to go see her on Sunday morning. So, but I'm sure that information wasn't that helpful for you. So anyway, have a great weekend, and we'll talk to you all soon.